अरुणाचल शिवा अरुणाचल शिवा अरुणाचल शिवा अरुणाचल.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I think usually on Wednesdays there starts having some discussion, and I think that's also a good way to get absorbed in that pure awareness and to understand what we are seeking for, I think, and that's also very good. So we can look into it. If someone has any questions, you can think, while maybe Neela Kantanji can say something while you are still looking into some.
याद्रत्सत्नसुषुप्तिषु स्फुटतरा या संविदजृम्पते या बृंहाति पिपीलिकान्ततनुषु होता जगत्साक्षिणी सैवाहं न च दृश्यस्त्रिति दृढप्रज्ञापि यस्यास्ति चेत् चाण्डालोऽस्तु सदुद्विजोऽस्तु गुरुरित् एषा मनीषा मम. The person plus the firm conviction that he is not a seen object, but he is the very consciousness which is prevalent during waking, dream, and deep sleep, and it shines through everything in this life, from the creator up to an ant, is an example. To that person who may be a Brahmin or of any caste, any lower, very low caste, doesn't matter. He is my guru. This is.
Any questions? Any? Yes, Susan.
It's not a question, but I just wanted to tell you about somewhere I went today, and you probably know it. You may have been there. It was William Ricketts Sanctuary. It's up in the Dandenongs.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And he was like talking a little bit about how when he made the clay, how the clay was part of him, everything became part of him. And he said, I don't really want this to be William Ricketts Sanctuary. I would like it to be called the Forest of Love. And I thought that was really lovely. And then on one of the carvings that I saw, it said, that thou art. And they said it in, I think, Sanskrit, but Ruchika would know the words. Or you would know the words, maybe. I don't know how to say them underneath. It was beautiful, though. And being out in that beautiful forest.
Tattvamasi.
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
This is very beautiful thing, Suzanne, you have said. And in this practice of self inquiry or self attention, when you are living like awareness, that is what the practice is, and watching everything, including your ego. And then this awareness from where you are watching everything, when you move from place to place, as you went to William Rickett Sanctuary or any place, it could be even in city or even in ranges, doesn't matter. But that awareness, it seems like everything is part of you only. Nothing is separate from you. That separation disappears. I know that people, when they start paying attention to the ego or to the thoughts or to the mind and the body, and they watch it, there's always some sort of a bridge between your watching and also feeling unsettled or, unhappy about something, or still the thought is gripping you. So it looks like you are witnessing, but you are not a pure witness. What I mean to say pure witness is that you are witnessing, but looks like this witness is still involved in things. But as you become a mature witness, this witness becomes more purer, in a sense that it is not involved with what it is seeing. Let's say a person comes from a countryside who has never seen a city. For him, everything is, my God, what is this? What is, and he's attracted to everything, isn't it? But when he stays in that city for 6 months, then he just moves on. He doesn't really pay attention to what is this. So, this is the same thing in a witness. When you become a new witness, as a new seeker, you still get really involved into ego mode. And the moment from the witness you become involved is unnoticeable, and then you get mixed up, and then maybe you only stay witness only for a short while when you are in solitude, in morning, sitting like meditative state. But in the daytime you get mixed up. But more you stay, more you watch. It is not a paranoid watching that you are judging ego or judging the body. But another beautiful thing happens. This witness which is witnessing, actually it also is watchable, because there is always mix of doing. Because when I say you are a witness, just be the witness, then witness is like a doing, isn't it? Because you are witnessing and you're deliberately putting an attempt to witness what is happening. And that doership is there also when you're doing this act of witnessing. But a beautiful opening occurs somewhere in this practice when you are really sincere, that all this is being watched from that neutral zone. Even this witness, and things being witnessed. And when this is being seen, this has its own innate power. It is very silent seeing, but it's an innate power. This witnessing becomes very pure, like it does not have any contamination of ego or feelings or even doership. It is. So you have to start from somewhere, using the attention as a very powerful tool. But once you stay with that attention, then it becomes an effortless seeing of all this even process of what you were doing. And so all this effort of paying attention as a witness also just dissolves in it, in that beautiful seeing. It is very hard to describe, but it is you only, but it is like newfound you in a way, you can say, which is still the same you without that contamination, and it is that which makes you so lighter, so spacious, and so beautiful, and you don't even know. It's not like you have planned to be that or what it is, but then this seeing, when this seeing happens, how it happens nobody can say, but when in this seeing, this never goes. So now, as a person, as a body, we interact in this world and we do so many things. Some we do it, some we are pushed into doing things. So whatever the destiny or this story of this body is going, but in that pure seeing, it never leaves you in a way, because it is what it is, and it is before anything is happening or not happening. So the dynamic role which the body plays is not an obstacle to it at that pure seeing. So then you don't even have to remember to do anything, or even how busy the life becomes or whatever comes to you. You are always that seer or seeing. It is. So, but when it happens and how long it takes to be there when it is a natural state, until then there is a practice, a sincere practice, a humble practice, continuous practice. But then this practice also drops. It just drops. It disappears in that one bigger seeing. Like it looks like you have receded even from the witness box. You have come further back. This receding, you don't have to do it. It just happens. It is like you are on the door of that seer of seeing as a witness. And I if you allow me to say, I will say that still there's an ego contamination in that witness, because doership is there, that attention is there. Attention, what is attention? Attention is again an aspect of the mind. It is not different from the mind, because sometimes the mind is attentive, sometimes mind is not attentive. So that attention is also aspect of the mind. So there is contamination in that witness also. It is not pure. Though we are trying with only attention, because we don't know, we haven't seen that unseen seeing, and we want to be that. So we are trying to mimic that in a form with the mind, being a witness, and the doership is there. But then what happens is, being a doer of paying attention to the pure awareness, which we call as antarmukhi, like you're looking within now. This is all the internal structure of ours. You're looking with attention of your mind within. And here, when you're looking, from where you're looking, you can still, there is some gap between you and the ego or the mind and thoughts and all the planning and judgment. So that can be washed from here, but it still has a link with the doership, this witness. And you stay here. This is the only thing what a human being can do. But from here, that jump into transcending that, from all this attention, this witness, and all this, what we are only capable of reaching up to this. If we stay there, here that thing will show its presence, show its grace. But how it will happen, nobody can understand how it happens, why it happens, when it happens. But you just have to practice up to this level only. You can go only to an extent. The work beyond this happens with that grace of that awareness only. That pure, the seer after which there is no other seeing. That pure seeing. From this to this, how it happens, Nobody can tell you, and when it happens, nobody can tell you. But you can practice up to what you can do, and after that, we are all helpless. But it happens. It happens to every seeker. That pure seeing will occur. And once it occurs, then it never leaves, and then there is no practice in it. And then
Yeah.
the mind, you are out of the grip of the mind once you are in that pure seeing. But until you are practicing as a witness, the thoughts and the mind, and even sometimes the attachment, the feelings, some heavy emotions can still take you into their grip, and it is the same witness, and there's a connection there. But then this connection drops, and then you are in that gap between this witness and that seer. Maybe there's no gap, there's nothing, it's all fake, but that jump happens on its own, like jump or transcendence. That is not in our hand.
I have a question.
Yes, Ruchi.
When you say that you focus your attention, now, attention is only focused, I feel, outward, in the sense the thoughts are also outside of you, emotions and whatever you're looking at. So when you say attention within, what do you mean by that?
If you are mature enough to call your thoughts as outside, that is so beautiful. That's what it is all about.
Okay.
That means you are already within. Because who says that thoughts are outside? If thoughts appears to be outside, you're already within. That means. If you're saying your attention from where you're watching, you are in and the thoughts are outside, then it's so beautiful. What else do you need? Stay there.
Thank you.
Can I add something?
Yes, Nilakantan.
Possibly, one point is when we are sitting quiet, if you are in that so-called happy mode or you have detached everything, and at that time you have to watch that happiness also. You don't become I am happy, that kind of a thing comes. I am happiness itself. I am not that detachment, that I am happiness itself. I'm not the person who is enjoying the happiness. That kind of a thing has to be left. That is the dichotomy. Thin layer is still there between that I am being happiness itself and I am being happy. There are two small differences. Possibly is that what you're indicating?
Some people think that going into this awareness, there is bliss. There is bliss. But we have to accept whatever it is. Whether bliss or even sadness or very unhappiness also, whatever it is. We are not involved.
Yeah, exactly. That one thing, that's what I'm saying. We are not involved. Still, some persons get attached to that happiness. That again is so subtle. We just don't know that. That has to be also, like you are saying, that we are still, when that happens, we don't know. But that step also to be taken. I am going to watch that. I'm not going to get attached to that happiness even. Like we are not getting attached to something seen. This happiness is also seen by me. So I am the seer of that happiness. And possibly at that time something happens, which we don't know. We can't explain it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Amit. Yeah, go ahead.
So when we're not, let's say we don't feel happy, or there's something that causes an emotion to arise, it's very easy to observe, very easy to be a witness, because you can detach yourself. Let me rephrase. I find it easy to recognize that something has arisen, and it very quickly it dissipates. When your mind feels happy, it's not immediately that you go to that detachment, because in a way, at least for me, if I'm happy with something, in a way, I'm happy, and I don't know how to say, well, should I be happy or not? I just let it be. If I'm happy, I'm happy. If I'm sad, then in a way I start to detach, and it works. For me, that works, and I don't know if that's right or wrong.
Yeah. So where you are watching from right now, that is what I'm saying. So when we are saying we are witness, there's still some contamination of that ego and desire to be happy. And so that is the reason why I never point this, but in discussion, I thought it is very subtle and it's very important to understand, because all our life we will be witness like an ego and no improvement. So we have to know that from where we are witnessing, this witness has to dissolve and then there will be pure seeing. So this is like you can say, and you are trying to reach up to where you can reach. You can only reach up to the door of this nirvana, door of this freedom. The beyond work is done all by grace. Nobody can claim that he has done, because who has done? Who will be left? Nothing would be left. The one who is paying attention to awareness has to disappear. And this person who is paying attention to awareness is getting lost when he's seeing some nice trophy there, some sweet in the form of happiness. He just goes back again. And when that ego bites, then he comes back again as a witness. So it is the same thief. This is what is very, very important. So to stay as a witness is also to be watchful who is the witness. Whether it is a pure witness or it is the same ego which is doing the drama of witnessing, and especially witnessing when something bad happens, when negative thought comes, and then it witnesses, and when there's an indulgence, it just goes and then dissolves, and then it doesn't pay. That is the reason why, all the gurus and sages have always said the suffering is bliss, because that is the time when ego hurts and then you want to move out. And when it is good times, nobody wants. That is why whatever anyone says, but for me, I have very high regards for a person like Buddha. With all indulgence, everything, no suffering, he detached. And whatever suffering people give in stories about examples were not his own suffering, not his family's suffering. He saw someone XYZ somewhere, old or died or something, and he left everything. His family was fine. I think the day he left, there were all these damsels and dancers lying all over the place, and he just has to take proper care that he does not step on them. So how many females were there dancing and sleeping when he left? So to and you can take it symbolic also, to move your attachment to the ego when you are having all the good times is the toughest thing. He left his home when everything, all indulgence stuff was there at his home. He was in his prime youth, and he moved. Same exactly is when this ego is being bribed by all the happiness, so we call indulgence or whatever good stuff, with all the gifts, the best gifts of the ego, and you detach. And that is why what Nilakantanji said, this is the most important thing, when that lot of bliss is or happiness is coming, and when you're watching and you get swayed into it. So we don't have to sway. Look, this is because if you swayed in the small happiness of the ego, the absolute happiness will not be possible to attain, because you're still in that ego mode. That ego has to dissolve to get that absolute happiness. And absolute happiness is not like you are just like a mad person laughing all the time. It might happen to someone, I don't know, but this is a constant, it's contentment, and it is standing on your own support in a way that you are not dependent on anything in the external world to make you happy, and nothing in the world will can make you sad. So that is that the neutral, that emptiness, which is only but bliss. Bliss is not a hypomanic state or manic state, though it can have its own moments in some people, because how it manifests in a body mind is only who can tell it, how it manifests. So we can't even write a book on it that it will manifest like this and these are the things by which you can recognize. Look, all the sages, they look so different. They're not copycat. Some are married, some are unmarried, some are doing something, some are doing seva, opening hospitals, some are just sitting in cave. Someone interacts with people, someone doesn't interact with anyone. Some of them actually they use swear words, they throw stones if you come close to them, and some hug you. So how it manifests and how that works in the body, nobody. But when it comes to you, you will know it. You will be that. But how it happens, you have to be at the door. You have to be at the door by just paying attention, not getting involved in the ego mind or anything. You have to be in that detached state. Practice that detached state. That is what you can practice, but you can't do beyond that. Beyond that, then that will take you. That grace will show daya drashti, it will do kripa on you. It will know that you are standing on the door, so it will open the door for you. It is all symbolic. There is no word for it. It's hard to describe, but this is such a direct and simple method. You leave what is in the obstacle. Obstacle is we what we know ourselves is the obstacle. So if we leave all this apparatus and just stay there quietly, it will just suck you in. It will take you. It will transcend you. And this is a universal truth without any exception.
One Mahatma put it very nicely, if I may paraphrase that. He said that it'll suck you in like the vacuum cleaner.
Like what?
The vacuum cleaner.
Vacuum cleaner. Oh.
So I like that simile, because we don't know when it is going to happen. Like that, it's gone.
But this power is so profound that even when we are discussing this thing about awareness, do you think awareness is fool? Awareness is giving these words to discuss, and this satsang is all arranged by not by me or by you or by anyone. That awareness has arranged this satsang for this bunch of people together. That is grace. That is your own grace. And that is the power of satsang, which will help with that energy of so many people together, will get you out of it. And this work keeps happening even when you don't know, because of your longing, because of your deep interest, intention into it. You have put that intention, and the work is happening on its own. So what we need to do is just stay as awareness. And we all understand that so clearly. Ruchi even said that thoughts are outside. So, if you have that profound understanding, thoughts are outside, then what is left? Then whatever you are. Just emptiness. When thoughts or feelings are outside, there's nothing left then. And just stay like that. All the material, we are not made up of any material. And all mind is also subtle matter. So if we are getting rid of all the subtle matter, emotions, mind, body and all, and we stay as awareness, then Neelakantanji's that vacuum cleaner will do the job. Don't worry about it. It's happening. Every moment it's unfolding is happening. You just stay there. And no other practice is needed. If something comes to you which you think is appropriate, then also it is maybe good for you. That's why it is coming to you and it looks like it might help you. But in purest, the grace is always working. It will take you to the right place at the right time. Even if you think this step was not needed, maybe it was needed the way the destiny has worked it out for you. So everything is appropriate in this. Everything is appropriate.
Thank you. I could only make half an hour. I need to go for a work meeting. Bhagwan even said to one of his devotees, you should go back to work. I read it, so I don't feel too bad. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sometimes I feel when you have less time, then you are more switched on. You want to finish it. If you think you have enough time, like some youngsters who have slight inclination, they think, I have a long life to lead, I will start this later on. But then let's say for another 20-30 years they have collected so much of garbage, now it's so difficult to get out of it. So it's better to start early, I think. And if you are always in that urgency is there, then it will come very quick to you when there is urgency in it. Anyone having any obstacle or anything which they want to clarify? It's all being sorted out.
Okay. I have I don't know whether it's a question, maybe some clarification.
Yes, Anuj.
It's based on one of the posts in Bhagavan Satsang. So, there was a question asked when someone asked Bhagavan about various worlds, Vaikunta, Kailasa, Indraloka, Chandraloka, etc. And then, do they really exist? That was the question. So the reply Bhagavan gave was, I'm just reading the post. You can rest assured that they all exist. There also a Swami like me will be found seated on a couch, and disciple will also be seated around him. They will ask something and he will say something in reply. Everything will be more or less like this. What of that? If one sees Chandraloka, he will be asking for Indraloka, after Indraloka, Vaikunta, and so on. So the thing is, my question is, what does that mean? What is his? I don't understand the reply so well.
Yeah.
So that's my question. So he says, finally, I think what he says is, the source of everything is one's own self, and if one realizes the self, one will not find anything different from the self. Then these questions will not arise.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I'm not too sure about the answer, the reply Bhagavan gave.
Anushaji, actually Bhagwan was making fun of this question, because this question
Yeah.
is not a question for your freedom. This is a question not for liberation. This is the question coming from the mind only. Whether there is a Vaikuntha or Kailasha, you still are bound by the ego. Like, let's say you live in, someone says, let's call all these different countries as these lokas. How does it matter, whether, how is Australia, how is India, who cares, you have to be free. So going to lokas and if you believe, then they all exist. Yes, 100%. But are you free? Is that the reason you are seeing Bhagwan? That is what Bhagwan is saying. They are also trying to be free. You go to that loka, It's just like in India, people are trying to be free. In Australia, they are trying to be free. In another country, they are trying to be free. How does it matter? What else would you gain going to a different loka? Maybe your standard of living might be better. How does it matter? But the mind, this bondage is still there. So Bhagwan is just making fun of that person, who is asking this question, because this question has no gain in freedom. You are not getting free of anything. Whether
Yes.
it's a-
Remember, there's one more point here which comes in Gita. Krine punyam artyalogam vishanti. That means once the punya is over, you'll fall down to earth or any other place which is lower than that. So any loka you go, the same problem like we are here. So that problem has to be solved by the ego going, and no other way it can be solved. That's what he's pointing out. Oh, go to that loka. So somebody so he'll go to another Swami, sit in front of him. Again, he'll go to another loka, he'll sit in. Like that, it will be repeated. So what is the use of going from one place to another? No use. So he's making fun of them, as Sanjay was saying.
Okay. All right. Yep.
So
All right. Thank you.
yeah, Anushaji, that is what the thing is, that unless we are free of the mind will take you for so many journeys in lokas and birth and rebirth. And if you see, the only thing which can free you is if you detach from this matter called as mind, matter called as ego. How subtle it is, it's a matter. You think that a person dies, nothing goes, but this subtle matter goes. This sukshma sharir goes. You can't see from your eyes because our eyes are not capable. But yes, some people's divya drishti, some people can see. But what the most important thing is to leave this. What is left even after death, you leave it now. So your death is complete death when you are detached with the ego. When the ego side is the complete death. Actually, you don't die when you die. So you have to die completely to be free. Because when the body dies, the sukshma sharir is still left. So you don't die. So you have to leave everything right now when you are alive and move to what you are in that purity without any sheaths. If you can do that while alive, then death cannot touch you. Because death can touch which is fake, which is only mental sheath. Death cannot touch you if you leave what even death takes away, that even you are not. But that is not an intellectual understanding or a concept or read in the book. This should be your own experiential understanding. And such a simple and profound method what Bhagwan has given. And I'm 100% sure Bhagwan has not given. Bhagwan has just again reinforced. It must be there always. In Vedanta, people must have practiced before him. But in recent times, we should say that it was Bhagwan who has given stress on this, such a beautiful method. Just paying attention to pure awareness. Paying attention to the self which is not involved in anything. Which is uninvolved, untainted, which is formless, nameless, and which is available to all of us, because that's the reality. That is the source of even this dynamic ego and the mind and whatever this we think we are. That is the source. And if you stay quietly, you just stay and you watch and you don't get involved in your mind and your thoughts, mind will lose power. And more you stay as awareness, this mind will melt away in your heart in that pure seeing. You don't have to do anything else. Such a simple method. And you can continue the work of the body, and even if you don't want to continue the work of the body still will do. Spend one time, take one day holiday and stay at home. See how the work catches you. Someone will call you, something will happen. You have to do those things. So when we say we are holidaying, this is the real holiday. When you don't touch your ego, that is real holiday. Not the holiday when we go to, some other place. The real holiday is when you don't touch the doership. When you don't have a doership, then each moment is your holiday. then nothing can make you upset or tired. You are not time bound. You transcend time, you transcend space. Death cannot touch you, suffering cannot touch you. Yamraj will come and go, he can't touch you. You're beyond the reach of anything. How? Such a simple thing. You just pay attention to pure awareness. This is your purity, this is the cleanliness. You know, Kabir says that I came to this world, I just went and I didn't touch anything. He's not talking about touching objects or touching females. He's talking about touching his ego, not touching ego. Not even whole word says that what a good work you have done, but you are 100% sure that I'm not even a doer. How can I do good work or bad work? Like the way Amit was saying, when the good things happens, we get swayed, you know, when someone says, oh, what a good person. Yes. When the bad happens, then we can use this apply and we say, oh, no, I have not done it. It was destiny. It was bad luck. It's not like that. It's always, there's no doer in it. The body has its own karma. It has done something. It has to suffer or enjoy. I am out. I am not an accomplice. I am not partner to the body mind. So I am not advocating for or against body mind. Whatever its destiny, it will do. So this is the thing. This purity, how it comes? By just staying as a witness to whatever happening to the body, to the mind, to the things around you. And if things are very inappropriate, the body and mind will do something and you will be watching. Yes. Don't worry that it will be like you are a lame person, nothing will happen. Things will happen. Things are happening. The dynamic world is not stopping because you are pure awareness. Things are happening in this dynamic world. But you will be in total acceptance and you know that you are not a doer of anything. So you don't take blame and you don't take credit. How beautiful it is. You are always in your own bliss. You are living but not living in the world. You are doing an action but not doing it. There is a term disinterested action, you know, the action is happening, but you are not indulging in that action, but it's happening and you are going and you're doing. It's not like you become stupid or foolish. You understand so clearly others' awareness and even others' ego. I should say this also. Actually, sages never say this because they don't want to pinch anyone's ego also. Because they are uninvolved. But actually even when a true seeker comes and when there is a fake seeker comes, it is so clear. Even not even seeing the person, that awareness understands. Like, you know, 25 years back when I came to 20 years plus years when we came here, you know, to Australia around, I think 2003, 18 years. I was looking for Indians in Ballarat because, you know, how to get masala, where is the grocery shop. You want to know things, you know. So you try to identify by the characteristics of how the person might look if he's Indian and you want to interact. Same is with the consciousness. Consciousness understands the consciousness so beautifully. The awareness, the higher vibration levels, it understands so beautifully. It's not judgment. It is that it understands so beautifully. Even in a seeker, the seeker, everyone might see that the seeker is so, you know, crying and all, but that awareness understands how the seeker might be not even in the room, might be sitting outside and, you know, praying. The awareness understands. It somehow it knows. It has no intention to judge people or no, but it just knows. It just happens. So it is not, nobody should take that a sage is someone who is more dumb. No, it's not like that. He is the only one who understands everyone in the room. How smart people think, that is only ego which makes people think they are smart. That is not smartness. That is only stupidity. But the sage understands very, very clearly Though even a person might be crying that he is not able to be free, but the sage understands, the jnani understands that there are contaminations in this person. But if the person is very honest, then those things can be pointed out. Bhagwan never pointed out people's mistakes or anything. Only the ardent seekers, when they ask Bhagwan, then Bhagwan tried to correct them, but not otherwise. He said, okay, you keep doing what he's doing. And this awareness helps not just you, this awareness helps everyone. Even if you don't interact with anything, it is like an energy, it's like a current. Let's say you are sitting on a bus stop, and then there is another person sitting here who is a very deep, highly evolved spiritual seeker, and you sit here and you take another bus, he takes another bus, but that awareness will raise his awareness because he's almost there, even if he's not there to see you. So this is the power of awareness. Don't take it lightly. Even when it comes to this insignificant body-mind complex of anyone, it has its own grace, its power, its beauty. Even if someone doesn't speak out, even someone who is blind, who can't speak, even then it manifests through it. Language is not a barrier at all. Even it's not by touch. And that is the thing. If you see in Indian sadhus and says they give ashirvad, they touch, some hug, Bhagwan never did. He never touched anyone. Like sometimes it might have happened, but not his deliberate attempt. But still people were in bliss as soon as they entered the room, even not entered, maybe entered the Ramana ashram, even at the gate. Even the people who never came to Ramana ashram even thought about him in his picture, sitting somewhere in other country. Even now, when the Bhagwan has left the body and here we are talking and made him our Guru, and is working right now in all of us. So that is the grace of Bhagwan. That is the power which manifested in this body. Let's say Bhagwan never manifested in a body which we call as Bhagwan Ramana Maharishi. Then how would you symbolically can be devoted to that awareness? Actually, that awareness is all pervading what Bhagwan was. He was that all pervading infinite awareness which you, me and all of us are. But when your mind focuses on him, though in a form, but with devotion and with and looking through his teachings and practicing those teachings, then how beautiful the transformation happens. So this is the power of the same awareness which is in all of us. When you touch that awareness, you are touching that pure awareness, what Bhagwan is, I should say. That is the pure awareness. It's not that it was only Bhagwan who got it. He got it in a fraction of a second, but who knows how much tapas he has done in the past. We don't know. But once we touch the same, whatever we do with our efforts or grace, I should say, not efforts, but grace, we will get the same. Anyone who has tasted, reached, understood, in anyone which it has manifested, it is the same, without any difference. And there is no gradation in it, that what Bhagwan would have got and what we will get is different. It will be the same. No difference. See all the devotees of Bhagwan who attained, exactly the same. But I would still say that we should never be a parrot of the teachings, like what Bhagwan said to someone. We don't know those circumstances, so we should not make it as a concept that Bhagwan said this to this, so this is right, and lakir ke fakir, like this is what it is. We don't know what the circumstances that were, whether he was joking, what was his mood, what was his emotions, what the other person wanted to hear, why Bhagwan spoke to him. He might have said sometimes contradictory things, one thing to other and something to other. We should not try to catch hold of what he kept saying, being skeptical about things and giving all these concepts to the mind. No need. Just pay attention to the pure awareness. And whatever knowledge will manifest directly to you. You don't have to keep reading anecdotes in all the books. Just for some understanding, it is enough that you become his devotee and you understand teaching and you practice teaching. Not more than that. If you go deeper into why he said this and why he did this and why to this person he said that, why this, it is none of our business, because we don't know the circumstances in which what he said, why he said. So this is enough that he has given us a practice. This is enough that we believe in this practice. So if we are not devotees of him, then we will not actually have trust in the teachings. This is the only reason why we need to be devotees. Because otherwise, this teaching might be written in some book in Vedanta. Nilakantanji might be knowing, I don't know. And then you can read it and then you just put aside. But when you have love and you have respect and you have devotion for a sage like this, then you practice it. Because the devotion helps you to have faith, and that faith is needed to start the journey. Otherwise, you will not do it. So Bhagwan's teachings are so simple, yet so profound, that if you do it, it is his Ashirvad, his blessing, that it will happen to you. There is no doubt about it. If you have a doubt, that means you have not surrendered to Bhagwan. There should never be any doubt. Who is doubting whom? It is just a thought. Why you pay attention to thought? That's the whole idea. To be the witness rather than involving in any type of thought. When you don't pay attention to any thought, the thoughts dissolve. It becomes a distant sound which does not bother you at all. And when you stay as awareness, you are staying in your heart. The mind dissolves completely and you are left with nothing. And that nothingness is the beauty. That is what it is. That Nirgun Brahman, the fragrance of peace, that silence dawns on you. And then what your body is doing, every action of you will be manifestation of that. That is the beauty of it. Somehow, this whole is, when you pay attention, what is this matter? Matter is useless, otherwise, unless it comes into the grace of that awareness. Actually, our body gets blessed. Even this pity mind which is troubling you get blessed by that awareness. It is which mind doesn't want rest, Every mind wants rest. We call it restless mind, but I think this restless mind also needs some rest. That's why with the grace of God, every night we have a deep sleep. So this mind which we all try to curse all the time also goes into rest every day, every night in deep sleep. And that is the eternal rest when the awareness dawns on us. That is that whatever it has worked for so long, just because of one misidentity, that we thought we are a doer, we are the enjoyer, and we have given so much of trouble to this mind, I think then we should all say sorry to this mind, and this mind will disappear. Because mind is serving whom? You tell me. It is serving someone who thinks he is mind and body. Otherwise, what is the role of mind? There is no role of mind apart from serving this ego, which is fake. And the moment you stay as awareness, which is your real self, the true self, mind has no work to do. So mind completely goes back from where it has originated, in the heart. And till you think mind is troubling you, then you think who you are. Mind cannot trouble awareness. Mind cannot trouble self. Self is all pervading awareness. Mind cannot even touch it. Then whom mind disturbs, that is fake. When we look within, when you are saying that all these thoughts are external, then this ego is also external. Because thoughts are serving only the ego. And when you stay in this watchfulness, there's all silence pervading, because now mind has no one to serve. That ego dissolves. So you can contemplate. You in this inquiry, you can use all these tark, or how do I put all these? You can contemplate on these all pointers, and these pointers will come within. You will understand this knowledge is not that you have to refer to a book or Bhagwan's teachings again and again. That's why Bhagwan has not written. When someone was writing collected works of Bhagwan or something, and I remember reading, Bhagwan said, I only said only few words. How come these books have been written? What I've said, I've not said anything. I only preach silence all my life, and still you have compiled so many books. I have only given silence. I have only taught silence. You know, so many times in Bhagwan's time, people wanted to record his voice. Do you think it was difficult? Bhagwan never allowed. Bhagwan never allowed anyone to record. You know, tape recorders failed. People did it hiding it somewhere, not telling Bhagwan. The tape recorder failed, it didn't record. Can you believe in all these years they could not record? Audio tape recorders were there. Everyone tried their hard bit. They could not record because his teaching is only silence. And so remember, until you get to your own silence, job needs to be done. Still you are on path of self-inquiry. The moment you touch silence, this is transcendence. You have been picked up in this vacuum cleaner. Complete vacuum, complete silence, stillness. Then even if you want to jump into the mind, you can't find mind. Even you run after the mind, come mind, haunt me, challenge mind. You can't mind, because it is like sun, your knowledge, awareness. When the sun is in full shine, can you see the moon? Mind. Mind disappears. It vanishes. This awareness is the self-effulgent God principle in us, which is all pervading. It blinds the mind. That is why all these techniques all over the world right now, mindfulness and meditation and all, is all crap. Useless techniques. It boosts your ego. I meet all these mindfulness teachers all the time, you know, full of ego. They charge $20, $30 for each. They're selling it like prostitutes. They have made business out of it, you know. It's useless because what they are looking, mind, I'm doing mindfulness. It's like a self-hypnotism. It doesn't take you anywhere. You read those books written by monks about mindfulness. They say you have to be the same mindfulness student for next 50 years. Bloody, who has seen 50 years to be same mindfulness student for 50 years, 60 years? You read those books. If you have to get rid of mind, you have to pay attention to what you are. Not just sitting like checking your sensation, checking. Don't do this drama. No need to do any drama. You understand and you are free. It is like all these mindfulness techniques are like you are cleaning your cage, making it nice, clean, keeping this mind here, this here, nice and clean, sitting in the cage and being happy. This is what it is. Look, they could not get a better name than mindfulness. Mindful, not empty, not no mind, not free from mind, mindful, mindfulness. Even the term is wrong. It is not mindfulness. For liberation, manonasha, destruction of mind. Have you seen any of these techniques which are rampant that they say we are teaching mind destruction? There's mindfulness only. Actually, they are very true. It's mindfulness only. And it is the most attractive thing because there's doership in it. Everyone loves it. They all sit like this, paying attention to body, sensations, feelings, thoughts, audio, sounds, things, and you just watch. Yes, wow. 5 minutes every day using an app. Beautiful. Morning and evening using an app. That's all good. App people are getting billionaires and you are also happy that you're doing something. That will never make you free, you know. If you're really a sadhak, you understand what I'm talking to you. Bhagwan never promoted anything like this. A lot of yogis came in his time, you know. He always said that it is good as a preliminary stages. You can do japa, you can do pranayam. He even just gave some importance to pranayam. If you see, he gave only importance to one thing, which is food. Apart from self-inquiry, he said food. Food should be sattvic and in moderate quantity, but rest he did not give much importance. Because he knows that you quieten the mind, it's a nice day, less thoughts, you go, you do, you are a doer, ego. You are not dissolving the ego. You are not getting rid of the culprit in doing all these techniques. The culprit is doing the technique and you are keeping that culprit. There is no manonasha. So for the real freedom, this is such a profound and simple technique. Just pay attention. And this attention will do everything for you. And you can keep this attention while driving, while washing dishes, doing puja. Even it comes to a stage that it becomes such a habit of you that even when you're talking, you are aware that you are awareness. You are not more aware of awareness than aware of things around you. That is what it is all about. If you understand this subtle point, that we are always looking why this thing is like, and you can know by the people's eyes how much deep it has gone. The eyes cannot lie. See, in a gathering, I'm not saying that you should judge people, but if you don't understand, someone's eyes are looking there and there and there and there and up and down and looking you from toe to the bottom. The eyes which are looking deep within, they're not looking anywhere. Eyes cannot lie. Have you seen eyes of a cow? Be like that. See in the eyes of a cow, you will understand what I'm talking to you. Cow is not revered just because someone has said, oh, it's a good animal, and all Hindus like stupid, they're just saying, cow is our mother. It's not like that. You see all the animals and see cow's eyes. See how pure those eyes are, those seeing. Then you will understand what type of eyes I am talking about. A sage eyes are like cow's eyes. It is not a coincidence that Lakshmi, the cow, got enlightened, When someone is very honest and very humble. We say he's like cow. That is the beauty of cow. And it reflects in the cow's eyes. So be that, bring that antarmukhi. Actually, this is also when you're seeing within, that external scene has no interest in you. So you're not watching things with attention. When how other person is dressed up or not dressed up, or how the house is or things are. You are so contented inside that external scanning has stopped. As a seeker, this scanning gets lesser and lesser. The judgment about outside things get lesser, likes and dislikes get lesser. Because all that energy comes here into the heart. When the energy is dissipated in the mind, how can you be free of the mind? An innumerable number of thoughts and attachments and desires and your likes and dislikes, how can it come back? So there are a lot of things which, even in your body, your sign language, your eyes, your intentions, everything, even if you don't say it reflects. Everything changes. You mature as a seeker, everything changes in you. People notice, even people don't notice, you might notice some changes. People might notice. I'm not asking that you should be proud of any changes, but the changes will happen. They have to happen. Everything, if your body, mind, intellect, everything starts serving that awareness. And all the srishti around you, everything around you also starts serving that. Because this awareness also wants to manifest through the human body. Don't think that you are interested. More than you, awareness that God is very much interested to manifest from human beings. That is God's ultimate desire. And you are fulfilling his desire through this body mind. It's a mutual cooperation. Don't think you are only interested. He is also interested. He is always interested, actually. But we have to be ready. And once we are ready, then it is already there. It's a mutual, because it's Ishwar Ansh Jiva Vinashi. This whatever in us is that only. And to come into full, to blossom it, we have to give up what we are not. Even if you don't give up, it will leave you soon. You will die soon. Soon means even, let's say, 50, 60 years, it is soon only. In billions of years of this existence. What are you holding then? What are you achieving? Nothing. You are only achieving death attached to your ego. And if you are not attached to your ego, then you are attaining Amar. You're getting eternal. You're getting Amrit. So it is your choice. If you attach to your ego, death is certain. If you don't attach to your ego, immortality is certain. Choice is yours. Let's sit in our silence. And pray to that pure being should manifest in all of us. Allow it to manifest. Be open for it. Pay respect to it. Pay attention to it. Love it. It is always there. And abide in your own stillness for it to manifest. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.